All right, welcome everyone. Here we are in September of 2024. Hard to believe that we're already here. We have our esteemed panel here once again, ready to have a conversation and to serve all of our journeys as we are moving more towards understanding these larger messages. So before we begin and just share an update of what's going to be happening today, we'd like to have everyone just tune in. We have a beautiful video that was taken by our very own John Bonzel. A beautiful video of the beach, and we ask that you just slow yourself down for 60 seconds, focus in on this universal heartbeat, enjoy what you see, and most importantly, tune in to what you hear. So glad you enjoyed that. The last time that our team met, we decided to do a silent meditation with this particular scene. And John, I know that you're a connoisseur of sunsets and sunrises. So what was the inspiration behind what you just shared with us?
Well, that was a vacation setting at Virginia Beach, Virginia. So you have to get up early and you got to wait. And for our subscribers, the magic moment was you have to watch that and then watch the sun hit the shore with the light and the waves and the sounds. So that's the magic moment. So anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed that. Brings back great memories.
That was beautiful. And John, you actually, that's really a large part of your meditation is when you enjoy the sunrises and sunsets each day.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Yes.
And what does it do? What does it do for you? What does it do for you when you're observing those sunrises and sunsets?
Well, you know, it kind of sets the tone for the day. When you give credence for creation and God and for all things beautiful, all things balanced, all things harmonious. I mean, how can your day, go bad after that?
Sorry.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Sorry, I got a little choked up there with all that.
All the poetry there.
Pouring out, yeah.
I think Ken is picking on you. So I want to say hello to Lisa and Linda and Deb. So glad to see you all and the rest of our folks that are on. If we'll show you right quick what we have in front of us here for September. So just take a look. We are in Unit 4 here in September, and we have 4 lessons with an extra one there at the end. The last time that we were together, we asked everybody to come prepared with any questions that you might have for Unit 3. Karen has done an exceptional job of pulling together our visual journey that we're going to have at the end of today. It's going to actually wrap up everything in Unit 3, and you're going to begin to see how everything builds up. So why don't we go ahead and dive into the beginning? Hello, Karen. Good to see you as well. Why don't we go ahead and dive into the very beginning of Unit 4, Lesson 13, John? And if you'll read the title and the first paragraph, John, because it sets the stage for where we are today.
It will be my pleasure. We further probe the secrets of the universe. We, the human race, look about us and see how very enlightened we think we are. We have air travel, motor cars, television, radio, iPhones, laptops, computers, in 1,000 countries unknown even a century ago, and admire ourselves as great people of a great age. We look back upon those unenlightened people of yesterday and say they're old-fashioned people of the horse and buggy days. Those people of yesterday were ourselves. There were many great minds among them, many immortals who enriched this age.
Keep going, John.
Okay. We look back 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years. We now say that the civilization of their day was archaic. They thought this about the earth and that about the stars, and one tribe slaughtered another and took over its herds, and one king took away the lands of other kings. That was long ago, we say, when the earth was peopled with barbarians. But those people of that far yesterday were ourselves. There were many great minds among them, many immortals who enriched this age. Shall we forget that tomorrow? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John.
All right, I'll finish that. Shall we forget that tomorrow is not far away when people shall look upon us as archaic barbarians who had to learn how to kill by millions instead of by ones? Will they judge our standards by the planes and motor cars of a material age, our archaic reasoning in our science, disunity in our many religions, and parrot-like memorization in our education?
Wow, what a sobering thought here as we begin our lesson here today. So as I'm going to ask each member of the panel to comment on that particular reading there, but I do want to invite all of our guests. So glad to see you all with us. I invite you all to share this link on any of your platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and encourage others to join us here. So if you will take a moment to do that, and I'm going to start off by asking Ken and then Karen and then Jim to comment on this particular reading, and I'll come back to John. So Ken, what's your thought as we set the stage here today?
You know, this struck me really heavy. I have made so many passes through this, and I certainly recall the statement about, how many lives we've lived, and you read that throughout the home study course. We've lived millions of lives to get here, even where we're at right now. So don't think too hard of yourself. Realize it's been a long climb. It has not been. This is not your first barbecue, no matter where you're at. In terms of the evolution of mankind, you can just, Göbekli Tepe is going back 15,000 years of civilization, let alone the caveman and all the mankind that we had to come up from. So I think the most important thing for me was to see, not to think too harshly of people that are not stepping up, that are not living that good life or shining that bright light. Maybe they're even dull and they're pessimistic and negative and condescending. Because, I guess I have to admit that I once was pessimistic, condescending, and negative. That's how I got here, right?
Judgmental.
Bonds will kick in now because he's going to tell you how negative. But no, I was kidding. But, it is true. And you know what it really helps me to do? It helps me to not judge others. I've definitely had a little bit of a struggle with some people in an organization over the last year. And I really... It helped me to see that, you don't get away with anything. I didn't get away with anything. This is going to go on further to talk about sin. There's going to be a great point that we'll talk about later. But most importantly is, boy, we better not judge others because we've done the same thing. If we didn't do it in this lifetime, we've done it in prior lifetimes. We've all murdered. We've all killed in prior lifetimes. That's a harsh thing to hear. But if you think of the whole evolution of mankind, you could probably relate to that.
Very love that. And before I go to Karen, I want to bring up Samantha's comment. She says, wow, I've always thought how I wish we could go back to no cell phones, no TV, and get back to nature and enjoy each other. There's a lot of wisdom in that, Samantha. Absolutely. Good to see you as well, Susan. So Karen, what is your thought to this opening? Because this was a pretty strong opening to this particular unit.
I think we were talking about the precipice of 1 million. Right now, we can kill far more than that. And I think we are on the precipice potentially of a nuclear war, which nobody wants. And it's awakening people to maybe what we have, and we really do need to take stock. And the other thing that came to my mind is everybody here has a different flavor. Like I know my home is very eclectic. Other people's is very traditional. And I think sometimes our flavors and our predispositions come from other lifetimes. That's the other thing that came out. And just to go back and look at the kind of the science that propels us. And sometimes it takes us forward. Sometimes it takes us backward. A lot of us were with in Tesla Tech, and Greg Braden did a really good lecture that day, and he basically said we're reinventing all the things that are in our own physical body until we recognize that everything out there is really already in here. And maybe that's awakened to that technology, and that's the ultimate one. So that's my thought.
Very powerful. Jim?
I find this is overall it's a wake-up call about humanity and about us. But the term that jumped out to me throughout this whole lesson is the several times that they talk about the immortals among those ages, those people that process things differently. They know their immortality, and they bring light and love to their particular time period. So yes, we've all done things that we either remember or don't remember that we're not proud of. But the key is to let it go, live in the now, forgive it. It's written, it's done. You're not going to go back and change it, but you can change yourself now through faith and love and character. So be one of the immortals in your lifetime who's seeking to bring light and change.
I think that's very profound. John, you want to weigh in before I go to the last paragraph on 242?
Yes. I think as we go through this particular lesson, you will see that the Russells are giving you one last shot at the body. And then they're going to move on into the mind world. And once we move into the mind world, it's going to be a different ball game. So anyway, this is kind of like the last hurrah to try to put into perspective body, mind. And so we'll just have to be patient here, all of us, and we'll work through it together. And hopefully we won't lose anybody along the way.
All right. I love that. I love that. So Susan chimed in. She says, we seek to change our old character and become one with the light and love inside me. So I know those are words well spoken. So I want to go ahead here before I comment. I want to go to the last paragraph there. It's highlighted on page 242, the bottom of that, because this really spoke to me. If we'll go down to these people of tomorrow will be ourselves. Yet there are many great minds of this age. Many immortals of today who will have enriched mankind of tomorrow. And so let me stop there for a minute. That is many of you that are listening to this broadcast. So when you take the time to come and join us every Sunday night, or even listen to this later, you are one of those that are trying to help enrich mankind. So I wanted to anchor us all there. And so it is that man forever seemingly unfolds without realizing that it is not man who unfolds, but mind awareness, which forever transforms man throughout the ages of mind manifestation through the body of man. So let's talk a moment about that phrase, mind awareness. Who wants to chime in on the panel to explain that to our viewers that might be new to the work? All right, everybody hold back now. I want to make sure I hold you all back. So,
I was going to say, John, go for that one, because I haven't done this course before, so I'm curious.
I think that mind awareness has to do with another term, would be mindfulness. So mind awareness is aware of the one mind. There's only one mind, and that is the mind of God. The mind of man is the mind of God when man knows the mind of God. But mind awareness is the desire to connect to that mindfulness that centers each and every one of us. So to me, mind awareness also is that my mind is the only thing for me that I've learned in the spiritual life that can be aware of when my body takes over. And it is a stark moment. It happens fast, and sometimes we don't always catch it. But I developed a mind awareness of, well, how's my one of the things I always check with is, how's my God talk going today? How have I been communing with God? If I haven't been communing, then my mind awareness has been only self-awareness. I wouldn't call it mind awareness. So mind awareness to me is being more aware of God and my connection to God throughout the day. I believe the ultimate goal is there is no separation. The measuring stick is how well did I do today?
okay. John?
I was going to say, of all the things that I've lost, I miss my mind the most.
Okay.
So do we, brother. So do we.
I wish I could get it back.
I think several people would relate to that, John. So,
Oh,
so what does it mean? So mind awareness, because this is a
okay.
language that is particular to the Russell works. I've heard Ken say before, you can weigh your brain, but you can't weigh your mind, which was a very helpful visual for my brain. So what does mind awareness mean for those of you that are new to the work?
Mind
It's being
awareness.
mindful.
Oh, I'm
You're
sorry,
mindful
James.
of who you are.
Let me
Mindful
go to
of-
John. Let me go to John and then Jim. John, what is mind awareness?
Mind awareness is the awakening of who you truly are
Okay.
and what the creator is. Mind. What is mind? Mind is all thought that ever was, is, or ever will be. So to become aware of mind means to become aware of what you truly are.
Okay. Well said. Jim?
It's the omnipotent omnipresence, omniscience of self, the grand self that's in all of us. It's connecting with that self. It's seeing that grand self in all people that you interact with, all people that you see not living up to that greater self, that mind self. And it puts you in a position from that mind self to see yourself as them and know that they are growing and learning. And that's where the forgiveness comes in. So holding the stage of mind that both Ken and John were talking about is a daily event. And the more you can do that, the more you will move ahead in all life's circumstances.
Okay. All right. Very powerful. Hello, Margie. Hello, Rita. We're so glad to see you all. Let's go ahead and move over here to the top of page 243. And then I wanted to come to that phrase where it says, a clue to your greater understanding lies in the one supreme fact that the greatest miracle which can happen to any man or woman is the discovery of his self. When we use the term self as applied to man, we mean the divine spark of God awareness, which severs the physical body from the cosmic light of mind. The discovery of oneself, therefore, means discovery of one's divinity, which unites man with God.
Notice capital self.
Notice the capital self, all capital letters. Absolutely. Now, I simply had the sad face. I had the sad face there when it was talking about human educational institutions have quite a different concept of man. They base their study of man upon the premise that man is body. And so let's talk about that for a moment. If we'll go back to the panel, this is a big distinct difference. Part of why Walter and Leo started the university was because they believed that there was no other university that was studying this spiritual awareness, the God awareness. Can Jim chime in on that?
I agree. And for the most part, there still are not. There's wonderful individuals writing amazing books and insights. And there's past individuals that have left us amazing books and insights. But as far as society as the whole goes, they don't look to the inner man. They look to the outer man and how their fellow man can serve them and their needs. And that's the reverse of love. And it's something that we're going to transform out of. I'm really big on that. Because it can be frustrating day to day. As things, I sat down in a chair this morning that I just fixed last week and one of the brand new wheels broke and fell off. These frustrations add up,
Mediocrity is a tough thing, isn't it, Jim?
It is.
Yeah.
So,
I say call your maintenance guy, man. You should fire your maintenance guy, Jim.
You're right about that. But the lesson was patience. So my first reaction was, I don't believe this. My second reaction was, I don't believe this. And then I just laughed it off.
So, John, I'm going to ask you to comment on that again, why they started the university. But before you do, I want to ask everybody in the chat box, if you would. I thank you so much for some of you that are out there sharing the links. We so appreciate that as we're growing the channel. I want to ask you if you have ever felt where you really did get lost and looking on the outer world, on the physical senses of thinking that this world really was all there was. So if you'll just give us any comments there in the chat box. I know that I was pretty stuck in that until approximately 36 years old. So I wasn't like John or Jim, who discovered this in their early 20s, or even like Ken, who was discovered it in his late 30s. I was a very late bloomer.
Yo, whoa. Late 20s. Late 20s, not late 30s, honey.
Oh, late 20s. Thank you. That's what I meant. Late 20s. Thank you for correcting me.
Just a decade.
So the late 20s, the decade is very important for us all, but let us know kind of when you started to step out of that. And Karen, when did you discover, and then I'm going to come back to John, when did you begin to discover, and what age range did you begin to discover that it wasn't quite what we had thought, this world?
I have kind of had a different life, in the sense that I grew up living in France and Spain and the Marshall Islands. I've lived in Canada and all over the place. So for me, the world was always vast and never cloistered. And so as far as it not being, I've always remember having dreams and stuff. So I can't say that I felt that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. So John, why, just reiterate for everybody who's listening, why did they start this university? Because it tied into the fact that human educational institutions have been focused on the premise of body, and they were wanting to have a university focused on the premise of mind and God awareness.
I can hear Leo's words right now. The reason that they founded the University of Science and Philosophy is that the science of man is the least known sciences of them all. And that's what this curriculum here is doing. It is giving us the science of man, who we really are, what our relationship is to God and to everyone and everything else. So that's the purpose behind the institution. That's the purpose behind this home study course and all of their writings.
Okay.
I could answer more to that one, Kimberly, because to me, when I did do the school for the gifted and creative kids, the seed within you is already there. It needs to be fostered. But when we do what they're saying here, which we don't do in regular schools, is we do rote, you actually squash the spirit of the soul. But when you actually invite their gifts to be brought in and nurtured, they actually flourish and actually love learning, and they come back with more ideas and more innovation and more creativity. And it's really a beautiful thing.
Love that. So Ken, why don't you share with everybody where they can hear Leo talk about the university? You were mentioning the interview that she did many years ago.
Yes, the PM Magazine interview. She states in there that the message of the USP is the same message that was delivered 2,000 years ago by a man named Jesus Christ, and it was a message of love and light. And the thing that the university separates itself from other philosophies and belief systems is that the university has a scientific explanation of how God works within us and how we work within God and how we are one. There's a scientific breakdown that is not in religion and most philosophies.
Love that. So I've asked our tech team if they can find a link to that PM magazine. I think many of you will like that. There's a couple of answers here in the chat box. Love to hear from more of you. Samantha says that she started in her 50s as far as awakening up to something larger once she started listening to me. Many blessings, Miss Samantha. I was so thrilled whenever you came to the first Russell experience. Susan said that the minute she got sober and learned from Ken how not to feel lost, that it's not the body, the misdirected instincts, it's about the higher power. Thankfully, he opened up the door and I understood. A gracious thank you to Susan for sharing that. Rita has a question for our panel, and we do want to encourage lots of questions. And so Rita says, in the second paragraph on page 243, what does it mean by the use of sever? So she's referring to the fact when I said we mean the divine spark of God awareness, which severs the physical body from the cosmic light of mind, right there by the star, James. What does that mean?
Well, I can tell you how it applies to an illumination. Remember, our body is divided between male and female. When the male and female come into perfect alignment, they void each other out, and in the voiding out, it causes the divine spark to literally short circuit between the two lobes of the brain. There's the flash of light that all illuminates talk about, and you go into godhood. The question for all people is, how long can you hold that? Jesus, as we know, held that for 40 days and 40 nights in the story, and he probably held it many other times. Dr. Russell held it for 39 days and nights. Leo held it throughout her life. She was born awakened and able to go into that state. Inspiration is, as they pointed out, is a small part of the beginning of going to that state. But it's literally a balance between the two lobes of the brain that cause that aha moment to the absolute total flash that brings on enlightenment and oneness with Creator.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So Karen has a question for us, but I'm going to have to
I
ask
would
you,
like to make a comment about that, if I may.
please.
Because, right, it says it right there. It says self in big version of self. It's saying when we use the term self as bigger self, highest self, as applied to man, we mean the divine spark of God awareness, which severs the physical body. So they're talking about with every one of us, our higher self. When we are in our higher self, we are in a state of God awareness, which no longer it frees us from the physical demands. That's what I read.
Okay. All right. Very powerful. So Karen, I see that you have a question. She has a question for us that goes back to page 130 of the home study course. So what I'm going to ask the panel to do is during the break, if they'll go back to the previous units for that question so that we can bring that back up. But for right now, I'm going to keep us going because we have a break coming up shortly. And if we could scroll down to the bottom here of page 243, because I thought this was a very, very important.
We lost Kim.
I think Kimberly just got severed from her body.
She's gone.
She's in mind awareness. Yeah, she's got God awareness. She's in her higher self.
That's it.
I could feel my ears burning. Scroll down just a little bit, James, where I have the arrow, please. So there was something, and scroll up just a little bit, James. So there's something really important in this particular unit, in this particular lesson, because it talks about the entire principle of psychology is misunderstood, misrepresented, and misnamed. And it goes through the dictionary's definition of psyche, but I wanted to read that section by the arrow because this is something that I've noticed is a big, big deal. Psychology, they said that the definition was that psychology is a study of man's, meaning body, adjustment to his environment, of the instruments he has evolved to aid him in adjustment, and of the ways he can improve his adjustment through learning. And so as we scroll down a little bit, they bring up the point that this really does mean body. And so I wanted to ask the panel for just a moment, because I've been watching humanity become hijacked in the field of psychology. I know there's a great deal of good that can come from psychology, but I've also seen a lot of traps that come from psychology where people are accepting the diagnosis of them from people outside of themselves. Can I have the panel just weigh in on that for a moment, John?
Well, let's go down 2 more sentences, and it says it all. The mind needs no adjustment.
All right. So right
Yeah,
there.
I think
that's
oh,
it.
go ahead, Bob. Yeah.
It's the end of story. So
that is true.
So the more conscious you are of your body, of your senses, and allowing your body and your senses to dominate your thinking and your actions and so on, that is what needs attention. But the mind is always perfect, always present.
Well, and I'm bringing.
You know, one of the things I wanted to say on that note is that psychology deals a lot in storehouse memories and that's why they use the term hardwired memories, which is really hardwired recordings or hard recordings. Those are traumas record themselves very hard. And remember, the brain has the capacity to remember more elements than there are known elements than there are in the universe. That's how much memory God has decided to give us human beings for a reason. We don't use anywhere near it, as we know, 10-15% tops of our brain. But there's a lot more. Intersensory perception, telepathy will become, telekinesis will become things that will evolve. But in psychology, it's all about rearranging childhood memories. Well, how did that affect you when you were a child? And how does that feel? And you know what I mean? And it's not really like what John's talking about. The mind, that's because psychology can't deal with the mind because it cannot be proven or measured or that equilibrium within the mind. They can show the left and right side of the brain, but psychology does not know what turns the mind on, the brain on.
And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because it's very important for us as we're going through the awakening of humanity to understand that the answers aren't necessarily going to come from some of the established fields right now either. So even my own personal experience with psychology, the minute you start to talk about having an understanding of the greater awakening of humanity, of the greater mind, there becomes a little bit of doubt and suspicion of any of these kinds of things. And so I wanted people not to become trapped by what is happening in this hyper diagnosis environment. So simply wanted to bring that to all of our awareness because we actually have the power to transcend a lot of that right now. Does that make sense to the panel?
Yeah.
This has been a big concern that I've been watching as we go along. So I wanted to ask the panel right quick. So the question is do we show a clip of Leo from the PM Interview magazine? Can I have a yes from the panel if you think that's a good idea?
Sure.
Sure, let them
heck
see our
yeah.
gal.
So let's do that. James has found the clip. We have a quick 5-minute. This was from an interview that we that Leo did from before, and you'll get to hear it from her voice. So let's tune into what Leo has to say, and then we'll take our first break. I can't hear it, James. So James is working on the sound.
He's got to mute us.
All right, so what we'll do is we can find out how to fix that, and we'll do that when we come back. But it is time. It is time for our first break. How fast our first 30 minutes go. So everyone, you know the drill.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick 3-minute break. Stand up, get some oxygen, grab some water, and we'll have a quote up on the screen, and we'll see you in 3 minutes.
Hey, whose phone was dinging?
It was mine again.
I was giving you a hard time, girl.
We are live, everyone. All right, everyone. So what we've been trying to do with the quotes that we end up bringing up on the screen are quotes directly from the home study course. I have a PDF searchable term version of it. And so we're working very hard to stay pure. But while we're waiting to see if James can show us the video, I want to go back to some of the comments that we have here. So Karen actually said, I've been on this path since I was 18, aware that I am responsible for everything happening both inside or out. I'm 64 now. Well done, Karen. Love that.
Yeah, bravo.
Very powerful. Deb says this, Karen, it was the same for me from age 18. She's now 73. The Russell teachings provided a scientific foundation to all I had studied up to around 3 years ago. Very powerful, Deb. And she continues to say the Russell work is foundation to all other teachings, and that once you have the knowledge, all truth comes together. John, can you comment on that? Because as former president of the USP, you heard a lot of people say things like that.
Well, once you have the Russell knowledge, the Russell teachings under your belt, now you've got a litmus test for everything else that is. And if it matches up and it's harmonious and synchronous, great. You know, you find one word out of sync, hell, throw the book in the trash. It's not going to do you any good. You're just going backwards.
Well, and Ken, when you found the Russell work in your late 20s, it seemed to pull a lot of things together for you and continue your journey. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it was very synergetic with me being heavily involved in the 12 steps. And I think I've expressed that before, because it's a non-denominational belief in something greater than yourself, which ultimately we all call and should call God. But it's understood by each individual. You have to have your own relationship.
Very, very powerful. Karen also says, I got stuck about 2 years ago and literally gave up, knowing that that's okay. I've had to work really hard to be balanced again. Here I am. So may we celebrate Karen for that kind of vulnerability as well. So James, let me have you tune in if you would. Can you share? Are we going to be able to share the video of Leo?
Yes, the video is ready.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Momentarily, it is processing. So just a moment, maybe 2 more minutes, and then we'll be able to share it.
Man, I need one of those circle exit things.
Okay, well, you know, we try very hard as we go through here, and we have some questions. So was anybody on our panel able to go back and find page 130?
No, I don't have that chapter in front of me.
So we will go back and look for that one.
Yeah.
So how about
I'm sorry,
I'll check it.
These 4 aspects will be discussed in great detail when we move into the sciences. It's basically the wave cycle. It's 4 steps in and then rest, and then 4 steps out. And you apply it to humanity. It's the pagan barbarian stage, awakening of consciousness, to the genius stage, to the illuminate stage, to the Christ conscious stage. It fits in all their aspects. So to just ask the question, what are the 4 steps? It's really much broader than that. But I can only say you'll see it very clearly in the science. This is where the science comes in and helps with these things.
All right.
It refers to so many aspects.
So
you want to know about 130?
Yeah, if you'll think about that for just a moment. There was a question on page 130. It's in our chat box. For right now, James is going to share the Leo video, and I will send you a copy of that particular question. So let's let it
look it up.
In 1912, this extraordinary palace was fashioned after the Villa de' Medici in Italy. Full of beauty and grace, Swannanoa is reminiscent of a more elegant era, but equally as impressive is the woman who lives here. Hi, Leo, how are you? How you doing? Wonderful to see you. Oh, I love you. To Leo Russell, this exquisite Italian Renaissance palace at the top of Afton Mountain is a lasting tribute to a lifetime of work. She claims she first saw Swannanoa in a vision in which God gave her an important message. In 1948, Leo and her late husband, Walter Russell, moved to Swannanoa to continue a mission that had actually begun many years before.
When I was a child, I used to lock the door, and my dolls would all be on the big settee, and I'd walk back and forth. I wasn't even 3 years old when it started, and I was going to change the whole world. I was going to change the thinking of the world. I'm still trying.
Leo was a child genius who wrote fairy tales at 7 and was selling her paintings at 10. She ventured from her English home to America, where her crusade to change the world's thinking continued.
We need cooperation in the world today. We need cooperation, as I've said before, between individuals and collectively. We need it with other countries. We all need each other. There isn't any country or person on this earth that's superfluous.
In America, Leo met Walter Russell. He was a brilliant man, accomplished in many fields, and a man in tune with their own thinking. Together, they set out to enlighten mankind.
It's the same message that Jesus came with, a message of love and light. Maybe the difference in our teachings here and most of the other teachings in the world today, ours has a scientific explanation of God and the universe, which we've never had before because man was not ready for it before.
Simply put, Leo's philosophy is as clear as the golden rule. The world just needs more love.
And if people could do things lovingly for each other, and we had cooperation in the world, we would never have the troubles that we have in the world today. Because it isn't just individuals, it's individual and collective giving to each other that we need in the world.
Together, Leo and Walter painstakingly restored the decaying Swannanoa. They painted, sculpted, composed music, and completed book after book outlining their beliefs. Finally, Leo and Walter founded the University of Science and Philosophy at Swannanoa, and they had at last found a way of delivering their message to millions.
Our work is, it's a home, as you know, it's a home study university, and we teach natural law, universal law, natural science, and a living philosophy. And this is really the ways and processes of the Creator put into practice. And the principles of man's life are really very simple, and man has made it all so complicated that he's in trouble today. And that was why we have worked all these hours, 20 hours a day, writing our books, talking to people, giving lectures all over the country, and so on. I believe people could still live to be hundreds of years old if they think right, eat right, and had good air, good water. Today we have polluted air, polluted water, polluted food, polluted noise, so many pollutions, but there's one pollution that's caused all of them, and that's human relations pollution.
In her many years, Leo has seen wars and pollutions tear at the troubled soul of mankind. She puts great faith in the youth of today's world to bring about a mutual understanding between men and women and an encompassing world peace.
You know, liberation is really, what is it? It's freedom of thought, freedom of action, doing the loving things in life. I don't think there's any such thing as women's liberation any more than there is men's liberation, because every woman and every man needs the appreciation of the other. I think so often we as women forget that men like to be made love to the same as we like to be made love to. They like the little attentions too.
While the teachings of the University of Science and Philosophy are somewhat scientifically complicated, the life that has exemplified her philosophy and the message that Leo Russell has tried to bring the world is simple.
Wow. Wow. So for everyone who, I'm going to ask John and Jim to comment in just a moment because they lived with Leo. wanted to ask those of you that just heard that, this may be your first time actually tuning into Leo's energy. And I wanted to ask if you would just comment on that while I ask Jim and John, because you both actually lived at the palace with Leo for 2 years. What does that snapshot of a interview show us about Leo? Jim?
It's just that. It's a snapshot. There's so much more that we were privileged to witness and be around. But it definitely comes across as her heart. She had such immense love for humanity and our potential. And she was so invested in us waking up. And I'm thrilled to have lived long enough to begin to see that happening around the world. So her desires are being fulfilled. But her love was just endless, just endless.
All right, John, what do you want people to notice about that as they tune into Leo's energy?
Well, that was just a sampling of what she truly was and is, and by us going over these teachings is reliving and promoting her vision, or her doctor's vision, of awakening mankind and saving mankind from himself. So yeah, it was brings back great memories.
Very powerful. So Rita said Leo's energy seems to be pure and honestly sweet and loving. Karen chimed in and said, I love the equality of men and women. She spoke, not coming from the past. Karen, you had a thought, and then I was going to ask Ken a question about this video.
You mean me?
Yeah, I thought you were trying to chime in. Just checking. You're good?
No, I just love actually the simplicity of it. And it was Jesus's message, love.
Yeah.
And the fact that there is no male, female, that it is a combined equal effort, not one over the other. I love that part.
That's written on the base of the statue of the Christ of the Blue Ridge that Dr. and Leo created together. Love ye one another, a message from Jesus through them back to humanity again. It is the simple resolution to all humanity's problems. Just love ye one another.
Now, Ken, I wanted to ask you to chime in. You're the one who brought up that particular interview, and you saw that early when you were studying some of these things. You had a special affinity for the love that Leo brought to the world. What was it that touched you about Leo?
Well, that's going to make me cry.
Probably her beauty stunned him.
As you read the home study course and a lot of the writings, you can hear her voice. I think she was pushing those keys, and then you can hear when Doc comes in with his stuff. But I can really distinctly hear both voices. It's the mother side. It's the love that came from her for sure, coming from a childhood without a real mother presence that touches me. Her love touches me to this day so deeply, for sure. She's definitely got a special place in my heart.
All right. So thank you so much for encouraging us to take a look at that. That was an unexpected special blessing here for this evening. So what's interesting is so Susan just chimed in. She said, I seriously do not know how the Russells, especially Leo here, aren't known everywhere. The public needs this to live in peace. We would certainly second that, Susan, in a very big way. That's why you see all of us here on screen, because we agree for the very same thing. So I'm going to ask if we could to go ahead and come over here to the top of 244, and then I'm going to keep us moving to the panel. I wanted to bring up something when they were talking about senses, because this was something that took me a little while to learn from you all. When it says, I'm going to just go ahead and read it as we get ready to bring it up on the screen. It says, when one sleeps, his senses are unaware of his body simply because of the weakness of the depolarizing current of his body. In other words, his senses can no longer vibrate sufficiently to think, just as a harp string can no longer produce sound when its vibration frequencies lower beyond a certain point. So I thought this was just an interesting point. Wanted to bring this up as far as how when we're talking about the harp strings are no longer vibrating, just like when our body is separating from the senses. And so, John, can you comment on that briefly before I go into the next page?
Yes. I'll give you an example. I experienced that this morning. I'm outside like I normally am early in the morning, grooming my place, and I had my blower in my hand, and I noticed the battery was running down, and I kept going until it quit. And so that's a prime example right there, that as you enter into sleep, you're falling off to sleep, right? Your battery, your brain, 2 lobes of your brain aren't capable of creating enough current to do that what you need to do. And that's why you need to sleep, so that the battery can be recharged. So you plug it in the socket, which means you're plugging it into God. You get recharged, and off you go.
You know, it's funny that you use that term, John, because a year ago I had a quantum hypnosis session, and it was very powerful. And one of the analogies that my higher self actually was giving me was that we all had like a cord, a silver cord that literally when we go to sleep, we're charging into that larger divinity and onto that larger thing. And the visual that they gave me was saying everybody's got this cord, but a lot of people don't know where to plug it in, and they keep trying to plug it into other things in the world. But it's just what you said, is that you're plugging it into the divine.
Well, it's not that they don't know where to plug it in. It's always plugged in.
Always
plugged
interesting.
in.
It's interesting. I was reading something on radiation and how our bodies, every cell of our body actually radiates energy to the point of its accessibility and how much energy it has, which Kimberly understands. She walks by people and know how charged their batteries are. But it was really interesting. I was watching something on ancient sites, and basically this guy who metered it said at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a circadian rhythm within the earth where that point gets totally, there's like a light white ball that goes off, and it's your connection in the night where you're actually literally plugged into the cosmos. So it's not even just a figurative thing, it's actually even a literal thing of how energy and currents literally work.
Very powerful, very powerful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take us down to the middle of 245 because we're already inching up close to our second one. Very hard to believe that. I want to go where the yellow highlight is, James. So let's keep scrolling down. And so I would like John or Jim to comment, because it talks about how when Alexis Carrel coined the term science of man, he meant man, the immortal mind, not man, the mortal body. Therein lies the difference in the teachings of our universities from all other universities and educational institutions. There is not one educational institution in America which searches for the immortal in man or bases its conception of education upon the unfolding of the mind. And so, John, if you could comment first, and then I'll ask Jim. Comment, please, because when they did this home study course, they literally wanted people to take this home study course and then receive a graduate certificate when they completed it, because they felt it was that important.
That is correct. And for the history buffs out there, Alex Carrel is actually the person that inspired the Russells to do what they're doing. You know, he wanted to save humanity from itself, and he wanted some type of institution, you know, that could do that and could lead that. And, you know, right before and during World War II, that concept, it dwindled away. And thank God that Doc and Leo continued it and has renewed it and has given it to the world. And here we are. We're trying to deliver it to the world as written in its pure form. So, yeah.
Thank you. Jim, you want to chime in before we continue on the middle of 245?
No, that was concise and to the point for me.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with John. It is a continuation of something that has been passed down through history by all the great teachers and mystics. And that man needs to go within and learn about himself. That's Tigger, for those who want to know.
They want to study too. We're all for that. So, James, if we'll go over here to the middle of 245, and thank you for everyone for sharing the links to encourage some other people. I wanted to go to the red underlined sentence there. It says Edison and many other geniuses have been sent home with recommendations to their families to seek schools for subnormals for them. So just a reminder to us all that when we named the show Awaken Your Inner Genius, we wanted to bring out that phrase genius. And Ken, why did we want to do that? Because you were one of the ones saying that we needed an initiative like this to help wake up the genius inside of people.
Yes, I think it's so important for all of us to recognize what's being said here, right? It's not like one person is smarter or has, it would be equivalent to the way Walter Russell talks about it, is that God did not give one person a thimble full of God and another person a bucket full of God. We all have the same amount, thus the term omnipresent. That means there's an equal proportion of everything within everybody and every atom. In the next lesson, it's going to talk about what one drop of water, how many atoms are in one drop of water. 6 trillion atoms are in one drop of water, which is 98% of our body. So the body is not real. What is real is what John is talking about, mind. Mind is. It's not on, it's not off. It is always is. That, and that basically the way that it's related in the Course is, if God were to stop thinking, this universe would cease to exist. That's why we call it a creating universe rather than a created universe.
Very powerful. I want to bring up Susan's comment, and then I'll come over to Karen. Susan says, Leo divinely said it so simple. It made me feel like I can do this home study course one page at a time. A lot of power in that particular comment. Karen, if you'll comment before I go to page 246.
It reminds me of where he talks a lot about God is within. And so when you think of Walter Russell, he would go walk in the woods. He would go walk in nature. When you look at Leonardo da Vinci, he would always look at nature. He looked at its wisdom, and you can always then transcend. So it isn't that it's out there. It's within you to tap into, which is really where he's basically talking about. So taking the time to quiet yourself. Going to school is just regurgitating somebody else's knowledge, but genius doesn't come from a book. If it was, it'd already be there. It comes from those inspired moments when you actually listen and tap in.
Love that. So if we'll go over here to the middle of page 246, you'll see where I have it highlighted there. And it says this, we'll go there. Yes. So the only teachings which can be considered higher knowledge are those which awaken the spark of divinity which lies dormant in every man. So let's just pause there for a moment. Higher knowledge, we've been so accustomed to thinking of academia as higher knowledge, and that's not what they're saying. Is that the higher knowledge are those that awaken the spark of divinity. And you must someday realize that all knowledge already exists. Knowledge and idea are God qualities. They are, period. They do not become, period. They are within you. They are the basis of your omniscience, your omnipotence, your omnipresence. You do not learn them. You recognize them when they awaken from their dormant state within you a little at a time. No teacher can teach you these things. No book can give them to you. The divine teacher can but re-inspire you with his own inspiration. So I want to go and ask John right quick to comment, and I'll ask the rest of the panel. This was really important when we started this whole Awaken Your Inner Genius conversation, that you are very clear that we cannot teach this. So what would you say to someone who is new to this work, who says, wow, this seems like a lot, but that paragraph just said that actually we already know it, but we're waking up to it?
You know, I think this quote from Walter Russell will kind of sum it up without getting wordy. You know, I don't know if it was a man or a woman approached Dr. Russell and said, oh, you know, I'd like to be a genius like you. You know, how can I do it? And Dr. Russell kind of held his fingers out and he said, you see that right there? He said, that's the difference between me and you. And that's how much greater awareness I have of the godlight within me. So that's the only thing that separates any two human beings, is their awareness of the light within. It's there. and it can come to you all at once. And the Russells are giving it to you the safest way possible, one word at a time. Leo used to tell Jim and I all the time, every word of the home study course is a mini illumination. And that's what you want to study. You can go get the big one if you want, but you probably won't make it back.
All right. Well, in
You
a
know,
moment, we'll go ahead.
I was going to say, I was reading this lecture by Dr. Russell, and he said there were only three beings that ever evolved on this planet have ever gone through all 9 gates and made it back into their body to tell about it. And he was one of the 3. So it's a pretty, I'm just trying to make the point that it's a rare thing that if you have the big one, or if you desire the big one, chances are you ain't coming back.
Well, or else we have a whole level of humanity, John, that everybody's awakening to much more of their light. And that's part of why I think many people are, it's time. What impressed me so much
Yes.
about the Russells was that they were ahead of their time. They gave us this incredible gift. And I believe it's been like almost locked away, preserved, even though there's been tens of thousands, almost 100,000 students that have studied the work. A lot of people don't know about it. And it feels like it's a treasure chest that's time to be revealed.
Well,
Fair?
if that were to happen, the man-woman idea would be done.
Meaning?
Think about it. There's a whole concept here, right? Where is the ultimate goal for man, woman to arrive to? We've been stating it, to Christ consciousness, to that awareness of there is no separation between you and God, and that realization, and then living that. When the man, woman arrives at that state, either we blow ourselves up or we will arrive at that state. The man, woman idea will be done, and it'll be the next idea.
All right. That's something to be thinking about as we're in deep thought here. It is time for our next break. So let's take our 3 minutes, stand up, get some oxygen, listen for any All right. 3 minutes goes by very, very quickly. As we're going through here, and we're only halfway through this particular unit, and I did want to go ahead and jump down to page 247. So there is a section in this particular lesson, and it was based on the writings of Francis Trevlin Miller. So you'll see him just noted up there. And while there's almost a whole page dedicated to this, I did want to skip down to page 249. So there's almost 2 pages dedicated to this. And on page 249, there was a phrase that came from his writings. You'll see the yellow highlights. Scoot down just a little bit. And it says this, if we scroll down just a bit. It says this. It says, it's been a constant adventure into the unknown. And so I wanted to bring that up because as someone who was not who was newer to the work than some of you, to me, that's what this has been, a constant adventure into the unknown. So I wanted to ask the panel, and I wanted to ask everybody who was online, do you consider the unknown an adventure or something to avoid? So I wanted to just center us on that for a moment, because I thought that was really part of what this journey was about, and part of why they included his writings. That they were talking about, you know, man has explored the cosmic and built up his cosmology. So I'm curious from each one of the panel members, do you consider the unknown an adventure or something to avoid?
I'll go. It's a total adventure, because the more I go and I look, the more mystery and the more beauty I find. And whether when I do the magazine, just like today, I'm working at somebody who's dealing with radiation, but all life is radiating, and how it works, to how your hair actually is light and how everything is light, just backs up everything that Walter Russell talks about. So every time I take a deeper dive at a different place, I come back to the same place, and it's fabulous.
Love that. Jim?
Who?
Jim?
Oh, me. Let me start off with a little joke that's worked very well for me over the years. Many may have heard it, but it works for me. Picture an individual in deep prayer, praying to God. God, please teach me patience right now. That's how I approach this course. When I first started in this course, I wanted it all now, and I wanted to be totally illuminated, I wanted to be awake, and I wanted to be on the mountaintop, and I wanted to be a godlike being so I could save the world. Many, many, many years later, I realized just what Karen was talking about. Oh my God, enjoy the journey, the adventure of it. Each little bit of awakening, enlightenment is so beautiful to experience. So slow down. You will get to the mountaintop and enjoy the journey.
All right, I'm going to go to Ken, and then we'll go to John. But Ken, you talked about how when you first studied the home study course, you too were almost anxious to get to the end of it because you so much wanted to know what was on the other side. So when it comes to adventure of the unknown, is it an adventure, or do you view it as something else?
I think it's an individual application.
Tell me more.
Meaning that each individual has that which is unknown to them. So knowing the unknown is an individual search. It's about, some people search and some people don't. Some people want to get a better life and know themselves and know their capabilities. Some people will respond to genius, and there are others that will say, well, genius isn't like that. You're either born with it or you don't, which is, again, programming. So the unknown is, to me, is relative to me, right? I always feel, I take this approach. I always feel like I'm just scratching the surface. So there's so much more to learn. And that, I think, is what Jim and Karen were talking about the adventure. But the unknown specific to me would represent each individual has their own unknown elements that they're seeking to know.
Beautifully said. So Molly says she sees it as an adventure, but I would like more coherence as I've sampled the smorgasbord of spirituality. I'm glad I found it here. Welcome, Molly. We're glad to have you. And Rita says this: in the outside world, it is sometimes something to avoid, but only because of my own fears. In the inner world, I welcome it more every day. John, would you like to chime into the conversation?
I would. I would not use the word unknown, but I would say a grand adventure into the known.
Oh, that's quite philosophical, Mr. Bonsall.
That's why you asked me to join this thing, right?
I did. I sure did.
That's it.
No,
Give you these
I
little
would agree with
tidbits.
that.
So well said. Deb said it's from the children's movie Frozen. There's a song, Into the Unknown. You're right, Deb. I have found myself singing that from time to time. And Karen says it's been a beautiful adventure in search of God. Not so fun when I see destruction and chaos. So great, full to no peace.
And my wife has said for decades to me over and over again when things get tough, she said, then we will live in the joy of uncertainty. And that's carried me through a lot.
The joy of uncertainty. Well, that's a powerful phrase. So let's unpack that for just a minute, because what's interesting is if we go over here on page 251 where we have it highlighted, we're beginning to move towards the conclusion, which is a few pages long. But it says this, right there, we've laid a better foundation for your comprehension of the one great fact of life, that man is ever searching for his divine self, capitalized, and in thus searching, he will someday find his self and God as one. Higher knowledge consists of only that which will lead to the light of man's divinity. All else is but for the body and is as unreal as the body is unreal. Okay.
Remember, Kimberly, God doesn't mind because you're not matter.
That is going on a t-shirt, John. Totally.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's move into the conclusion for this particular lesson, because there are several pages there, and it says this: there is naught but good in all the universe, for God is love, and he created a universe of love and all its expressions, which is like unto him. There is no sin in all of the universe. Sin is a product of man. It is made by man in his own image, for every creation of man is like unto man. And so the next paragraph, it goes into the difference in talking a little bit about the pagan teachings and what they were trying to correct there. So I want to ask the panel. I'm going to ask John and Jim and Ken to chime in, and then Karen and I will come around. What does it mean that there's no sin in all of the universe?
Well, pretty straightforward, isn't it? What are you sinning against? What is sin? Sin is something where, it's defined as you doing something wrong against God, this vengeful God that's going to get you if you sin. How ridiculous. It's just a mind control thing that's hundreds, if not thousands of years old, and man needs to get beyond it.
Okay.
That's what we're doing today. We're getting beyond it.
Jim, if you'd like to chime in.
Well, what they refer to as sin is imbalance. When we have an imbalanced action or thought, and it is recorded as imbalance, then the way we learn from that situation is that imbalance is reflected back to us. And in that reflection back to us, we either learn from the lesson or we don't. God is not concerned about the everyday decisions that we make that are balanced or unbalanced. God is only there to be us. And how long that takes is up to us. Free will is amazing. I mean, it still blows my mind. I have free will to be a saint or a sinner, but in the process of experiencing either or, I don't change the universe and I don't change the divine that's within me. I simply learn to connect with it or choose not to. And if I choose not to, I suffer accordingly. It's that simple.
Okay. All right. It sounds simple. So I want to continue the conversation. Ken, can I read a little bit more before I hand it over to you?
Sure.
So on the top of page 252, on the bottom of page 251, it says, he who sins can stop sinning like sound which ceases when its cause ceases. Neither God nor Jesus can void that which has happened. It is recorded by the light waves of the universe forever. Its record is in the seed of the sinner, they have in quotes, whom it alone hurts. And on the next page.
Mm-hmm. I think Kimberly ascended into the ethers.
Again.
She's lost her connection, man.
I'm telling you what, see, those are the things that can happen to you when you read this course. You never know. You just, boom.
Well,
read
you
two-
said if it
Gone.
all comes at one time, you may not come back. So maybe she had that
That's
one
it.
night experience. and
That's
she
what
got
I've been telling her. Don't
I
do
got
it.
a problem with that one. She
Don't
better come
do it.
back.
Hey, you guys, this next paragraph I think
coming
is
back.
really important.
Go ahead, Karen.
I'm gonna comment on that last thing about sin that she was going to ask me to comment on. Is what I think is a good idea. So why don't we, in terms of that, why is that? Is the same thing that I would correlate as. Do you think time is a man concept or a God concept? Right? Where does time? You think God wears a watch? You think God's got a clock? So if God doesn't
Yeah, it's
have
a
a clock,
Rolex.
then so time is a man concept for the purpose of measuring matter or seasons, if you will, which would go back into the era of growing crops, right? That goes back into the seasons, and thus Stonehenge, where my girl was at last time. That's all a fabrication of time. That's all the manifestation of time to come. But time is a man concept. So is sin. Sin is a concept of man. And I think the best way that it's related throughout the course is that to talk about if you're a screenplay writer, which God is the master screenplay writer, and creation is screenplay. And so you have good characters and you have bad characters in your screenplay, and the bad characters have just as much as importance as the good characters. And the way that the law works itself out, as Jim was talking about, like if you're a kid and you lose your balance and you bump your shin, and you learn not to get out of balance or not to move too fast, so you bump your shin, that what seems like a bad event where there's blood or maybe even a bruise or crying and suffering is converted into a good event because you've learned a lesson, and that's why there is no sin. And as it's been stated, you can only sin against yourself. When you hurt your neighbor, you hurt yourself more than you hurt your neighbor. It's in the salutation today, it's if I rend the day, I create mayhap, which means to ruin it is rend. It means I create mayhap 10 times 10 to undo the rending.
Sure.
So again, sin is not, it is a man concept, just like evil, just like all those things. It's been stated, as John said, it's been around, started around, a couple thousand years ago, all the way back to the pagan days. Remember, they used to do blood sacrifice that they were getting to God. But that was not the way to God until man evolved to the point realizing that God is within, which is what Christ sent the message. But also remember, in terms of the science, when we think about it, it came to me earlier. Remember, Christ said, there are many things that I cannot tell you for you're not ready for them. But Christ did say, be the salt of the earth. And I know that Jim and John can talk about what is the salt in a scientific expression, realizing that Christ was literally a consummate scientist. And that's what Dr. Russell talks about, that those things couldn't be related at the time, just like at the time it couldn't be said mother, father, because mankind wasn't ready to hear that term at that time. So time again is just a man-made concept. So sin is a man-made concept, if you will. There is only one expression, and that's the hardest thing for us to hear. But after layers and layers and hearing it repetitively, you realize that God is love. How can there be sin in love, right? And if you're a master screenplay writer, let's say a painter, right? If you're a painter, what's more important, the shadows or the color when you're painting? Or are they equally as important because they offset each other? So you'd say the shadows were darkness, but they're really not. They're highlighting the light, right? So it's about that duality of imaging.
They would say,
again, sin is not in God's vocabulary. There's one word to describe God, and that's love. And Christ said if there's going to be another word, it'd be light. Light is what God uses to manifest duality, and love is the motivator behind that manifestation.
well, that was why I was bringing up the top of page 252, and I'm not sure why the tech pushed me off, but I want to go back there for just a moment because it's exactly what you just said. Creation is a drama of cause and effect. It is 100 million years long lesson and learning how to balance effect with its cause. And if we'll scroll down just a little bit more, James, it says life must be lived. Man must learn how to live it. Every man on earth must learn his lessons of balanced interchange in every transaction. He cannot learn it in one life nor 1,000 lives. Christ's consciousness does not come to primeval brute man. It comes only to the completely unfolded spiritual. man. John, your thoughts?
I did have a thought that I wanted to introduce. You know, the Russells, Leo does it very well in her book, Why You Cannot Die, The 5 Levels of Man's Ascension and Unfolding. But I think she left one out called Ignorant Man. I mean, think about that. Anybody that has common sense, all right, should be able to figure this out on their own, right? That nobody, not even God himself, can save you from yourself. Only you can do that. So it's time, you know, that the world woke up. All right, let's get this message out here to the millions. And maybe, you know, maybe we can kind of extend this thing a little bit.
Well, so I like that invitation, John. Before we go to the top of page 253, I was going to ask if James could come on and show our viewers the count. So we wanted to ask our viewers, as we're continuing here, is that right now we are up to 385 subscribers. Our goal is to reach at least 500, right, James?
Yes, that is correct.
And so 500 viewers, and we're also trying to reach a number of viewer hours, which right now we're just under 1,500 viewing hours, that's very, very exciting. And we're trying to reach 3,000 because when we do, we're able to actually begin to introduce the t-shirts, right, James?
That's correct. Yes, once we reach 500 subscribers plus 3,000 total watch hours, we could do.
So when we talk about, I wanted to show that we're not quite to the millions yet, as John's mentioning, but I have great faith, pun intended, that we can get there. James?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, you know, we constantly get a ton of great comments. I think a recurring comment that we get is, why aren't more people subscribing? Why aren't more people tapped into this message? So I think it's just a matter of time. And we've been at this for, well, before we started going live consistently, since January, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So this is our 16th episode. So we are going to just keep showing up every Sunday night. And I think over time, people will begin to get the message. And if anybody can share this with someone they feel like this would resonate with, that would go a long way to helping us grow this channel and get more people involved.
Pretty exciting. And so, John, I wanted to chime in here. What you were talking about actually is carried on to the top of page 253. And it says that when Jesus said, forgive them, for they know not what they do, he meant just that. They did not know. And people of today do not know. The spiritual in man has not yet unfolded enough. Okay, I'm scrolling on down. Scroll down, James. Top of page 253. Okay. The spiritual in man is not yet unfolded enough to begin to understand the meaning and import of balanced transactions between mate pairs. The buyer and the seller are mate pairs. One cheats the other. Cheating and murder are relatively the same. They differ only in degree, yet the deeply religious man who gets in the better end of the bargain really believes that he is good and will go to heaven, while the murderer must be condemned to everlasting fires of hell. And it scrolls down just a little bit, and I highlighted the part where it said humanity is like a class in school. And so I wanted to just mention to the group, forgive them for they know not what they do, is something that I really had to learn a lesson of over the past few years when I had people do some pretty mean things in my world. And I was constantly guided about this effort is that literally they just did not yet have the spiritual unfolding. And so I'm curious from the panel, when have you struggled? And I'm going to ask every one of the participants if you'll chime in. But on the panel, when have you really struggled with having to actually remind yourself to forgive them for they know not what they do because they have not yet reached the level of spiritual maturity to understand what was done?
All my adult
That's
life.
a great one for Jim. Yeah.
Up until today.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
But I start my day every day, year-round, winter, spring, summer, fall, sitting outside in my bare feet, grounding with Mother Earth, listening to the silences and communing with God. And I ask God to be with me throughout the day. So when I stumble at this point in my life, it's not too difficult to get up and get back on in alignment with the divine. Years ago, it could take me days, weeks, months, and I would be a boat without a rudder. And when you're that boat without a rudder, you bump into things, circumstances that you could otherwise pass right around. So yeah, it's a practice, it's a habit, and when you do it, you get better. You get better. It doesn't mean that things won't happen. You might talk about this here today. You know,
Sure.
one of my statements, Jackie, all the time is, I really don't enjoy doing the same thing twice, and it happens a lot.
There you go. That's
So I've got to learn to love it. I do.
or at least laugh one of those things. So, Ken, are you on mute?
Change your thinking.
Okay, he's on. For some reason, we're having technical difficulties there. John, you want to chime in?
No,
Until we get...
I accidentally hit my button. My bad. Go
Okay.
ahead, John.
Well, listen, this might sound like a hard statement, but it's not that I don't care about rest of humanity, but I'll just repeat Leah again when she said, remember, boys, it's an individual journey. So humanity can only go as far as we go as individuals. So I'm not worried about what everybody else is doing. I'm just trying to focus on myself to try to bring beauty and peace and harmony into the world. And hopefully it will inspire others to do the same.
Well said. Ken, you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I think resentments are a big killer. You know, I certainly have learned that in the recovery world. Resentments, you know, we blame people a lot in our thoughts, if not in our speech. And, you know, it's nobody's fault. And forgive them for they know not what they do. As you start ascending to a higher level, you know, it's like John says, there's certain energies I choose to be around. And if something doesn't fulfill a purpose for me and the energy isn't good, then I've lived in a world now that I realize the world's not going to change for me, but I can change for the world. And I think that's the most important thing that all of us should recognize. The world is not going to change for us, but we can change to meet the world. And I think that's what we're talking about now. Forgive them for they know not what they do. Actually, Jim had talked to me about that when I first met him and really helped me to connect to some childhood stuff of parents and things that didn't go well that you can't correct and you can't change. So you really have to learn to just forgive them for they know not what they did. If you have any kind of betrayal or trauma, that's so true.
Beautifully and powerfully said. So as we're beginning to wrap up here, and we know that many of you will have questions, I wanted to mention something on page 254 as we're wrapping up our lesson and getting ready to share Karen's beautiful visual journey. And I want to go to that second paragraph. It says, can you not see that if it were possible for anyone to save man from sin, it would mean that all men of the earth would become Christ conscious at once. They would instantly pass through all stages of growth, the primal stage, the genius stage, the cosmic conscious stage, and the final Christ conscious stage. To do this would render creation purposeless. The purpose of creation is to act the play of cause and effect in the universe of time. And so scroll down to the next highlighted sentence, James. It says, all of life is an experiment in finding the way to live. And I wanted to end here on this particular paragraph and ask if anyone had a comment before we show Karen's video. But it says, do you not see, therefore, that the pagan beliefs of yesterday must be cast off in order that today may be an advance beyond yesterday? Do you not see the world cluttered up with these pagan beliefs? Do you not see that man becomes what he thinks? And if he thinks evil, he becomes evil. Do you not see, therefore, that sin and evil are man-made products which do not exist in nature? Do you not also see that this world of fear and chaos is also man-made by talking fear, teaching fear, and creating fear, even unto creating a God of fear? Wow. So here we are. Final words from the panel as we wrap up lesson 13, because this was a very powerful lesson and really recalibrating our relationship with the world.
Fear, the great inhibitor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Also, energetically keeps us.
So if you understand, if you accept your divinity, your immortality, and you know that all things material in this sensed universe are simply an illusion. Ken and I talked about this the other day. Why in the hell would you get upset over anything material, knowing that it's just an illusion and it doesn't exist in the first place. So you got to put things in perspective.
Okay. Love that.
And
Karen,
You
you
know
want
that
to?
every fear ends in death, and there are only two fears in life: the fear that I'm not going to get what I want, right, or the fear I'm going to lose what I already possess. There are unlimited derivatives and forms of it, but those are those two base fears. And every fear, if you follow it all the way through, no matter what you're afraid of, always ends in death.
Okay. Karen, you had a thought?
Yeah, I'm just thinking as we're going through this tunnel at the moment where there's so much fear being propagated, I think it's really important to really remember these lessons and to know that we don't have to create that. We can create something different when the world is asking us to be the other. So yeah. So
Yes.
Stay in the light.
Stay in the light. Certainly well said. Jim, last thoughts before I comment and we hand over to the visual journey for Karen.
Well, Karen's point is beautiful. It's holding on to the understanding that the they that we all talk about, the controllers on the world, they're a very small group of people in humanity, but they're in positions of control over the media and other things that can create the illusion that the world is a horrible place and it's falling apart constantly. The exact opposite is true. The world is an evolving place and it's awakening into the light and the love of man for his fellow man all over the place. You're just not seeing it, but it's happening. So turn off the news. Turn off the propaganda. Meditate, commune directly with Source, and you'll be amazed the beauty of the world that will evolve around you by not falling for that. And the fear factor. What's the fear? I mean, the only thing that gives me any concern on this planet, which gives most people concern, is pain and suffering. Death? I'm 73 years old. I dance with death every morning. I get up. Hey, I made it. You know, no fear there at all. So if we can stop letting them pull us into their propaganda fear messages and stay in the light and love our fellow man every morning as the individual that we are, it all goes away. You live in the frontal lobe centered by God. You don't fall back into the amygdala, which is fight, flight, and fear. You don't do that. Don't let them take you there. Stay up here and reason and love.
That was really John. Yes,
Kimberly,
Karen?
just quickly on this one this is the perfect time in history where we really need to activate our genius, where we really are being called to tap into what is that next innovation and to be bold in doing that. And that's what we need right now. We need boldness. We need innovation. We need to step out of the paradigm they've tried to keep us in. And we've had many geniuses, and it's time to step forward.
Time to step forward. So well said. There's more to share, but we do want to share with you the visual journey that Karen has so lovingly pulled together for us. And so there was a request in the past few sessions for us to extend the visual journey so that you have more time to read the comments, to read the quotes. So sit back, enjoy. If you need to take a break, do that. We will be uploading this visual journey to our YouTube channel, but this visual journey is a compilation of everything from Unit 3. And you're going to notice that as you're going through each unit, the themes, the messages, and the language are going to get easier and easier. Sit back and enjoy the gift of love that Karen has given us. All right, we're trying to bring it up here. Okay. We're working on that at the moment. James, if you could chime in.
I have added it, so we'll see. Just give it another moment. It may just need to load. So we'll just give it a second.
This one was longer than the ones before, so we'll see how that goes. All right, the joy of technology. So while we're waiting for this, if you would, please be thinking about questions. I'll stop talking just as soon as we have the video coming up. But if you would, please go ahead and bring in the questions. Okay, we have the sound, but no image.
I'm going to remove it and try to add it back and see if that fixes it.
Okay. All right. We'll do that. So, Ken, you had already, let me go back to some of the questions here. We had a question on page 130 from one of our participants. And if you would answer this one, she said, question, Leo talked about the 4 bodies of energy, entirely different qualities to make a body, sun, or element. What are these 4 successive foundations, step to transformers of nature? She said, referred to it on page 130.
Yeah, that goes in with the oppositely.
Here we go. Here we go. We got it, James. All right. Apparently, we're having a little bit of an internet problem. So with the joy of technology, we'll always go to plan B. So if I could have James come on and give us some guidance as to what we do next. Would you like us to continue with Q&A while you and Joey fix the mechanics? James?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Yes, my entire screen went black when I tried, so I will try it again if you'll just continue with Q&A.
Okay. So do you need a moment and have us go ahead and answer questions while you're working on that?
Yes.
All right. So Ken, you were diving into that question. Let's go back to you.
Well, actually, I think Mr. Bonsall Reporter would be better advice, but it does have to do with the male, female, the north, south, east, and west poles. Those are the old 4 mated pairs that create all of creation. But I think John or Jim would be really good on answering that one.
All right. So John, you're on mute.
The picture over Ken's left shoulder answers the question.
Okay.
Yep.
They're talking about the wave, the 4 mated pairs.
Tell us more.
I think it's a little too early to go into the wave scientifically, but so we'll just tell our person answering the question to be patient, and we'll blow her mind later on.
Yeah, but 4 mated pairs is good. Okay, Karen wants to answer.
Karen, you're on mute.
I can't unmute myself.
There you go.
When we look at life and we part of the electromagnetic spectrum, the way the electricity flows is not one consistent. It flows in a circuit. So it's on kind of well, and it cycles and it goes through a rhythmic pattern, just like the mountains, just like the currents of a coastline. Everything has an energy where it goes from hot to cold, the male, the female, the in, the out, the ups and downs. In that cycle of its doing, us creating, we go through cycles. We go through the different levels of intensities of even our own soul and our own evolution. So I think sometimes when we talk about the male and the female pairing, we need to also look at it from the perspective that it is the yin and the yang. It's a perfect Eastern symbol that represents it. And it shows the currents actually flowing. And it's one, what inside the other, you see a dot, because inside the other is the other. That's the other thing. And it is a flow. And when you look at even the video, when we get to it, it's showing you that even our music is actually pointing out the rhythm of which how we live life. And a mountain isn't just normally straight, it flows. There's a current to it. During the time of the day, we've got the hot and the cold, we've got the night and the dark. There is a rhythm to life.
Okay. All right. So we'll continue this conversation. James said that he has it ready. We're not sure. We're going to try the internet again and see if we can enjoy this visual journey. Let's all just send it positive energy and see what we can do.
It's jumping.
So we made it through it. Made it through it. So let me start by asking the panel to comment. John, your thoughts on that visual journey?
There's a lot there. I can tell you that. So that's why you need to revisit it time and time and time again. Each photo, each segment. Hell, we could talk for hours. So job well done, Karen. Beautiful.
Thank you. You'll have to watch it when it loads because there's a lot of missing segments to it. It just went really quick over certain things, and yeah, it just wasn't loading and playing right. So I would say when they upload it, you'll have the time and the space, and you actually see finished sentences.
Well, yeah. Well, I think that part of the problem was just the bandwidth, but in general, so Jim, what was your response to the visual journey?
Well, I've always been a visual learner, so it helps me a lot when I have things like that to look at and to contemplate.
Yes, me too.
I also love the fact that last week you pointed out that we can stop those at any point and really look deeply into each slide. So that's very nice.
Love that. Ken, your thoughts on the visual journey?
I thought it was terrific. Just as Bonzel said, it's a lot of information, but I like that. I'm sorry it staggered, guys, but yeah, I encourage you to go back and look through it. And the other journeys we're going to get up there too is the goal. But I thought it was very informative and helps, it gives you that visual image, which is positive for anybody. It's another way of saying dual sensory perception. You can hear us, and then you get to see that. And if you connect those two, you're going to be that much further along.
So I want to comment on some of the participants. Karen said, wow, Karen, again, amazing, with lots of emoticons, Karen. Enjoy that and drink that in. Margie says, all the words of wisdom warm the heart. Thank you. Rita said, beautiful, Karen. Thank you. And Bruno said, I love the energy, Karen. So what a gift that she pulls together for us. And what I would like everyone to notice is that, especially for our new students, do you notice that some of the phrasing and some of the words are becoming a little more familiar to you? To me, that's what I noticed this time, is that Karen, yes, it was lots of big messages because she's attempting to take all of Unit 3 and put it here, but it's going to be very helpful by the time we finish this whole year home study course. We will have 12 visual journeys, and they will each build onto the other. Is that fair to say, John?
Yes, absolutely.
So quite powerful, Karen. And so as we finish up here, any other questions from the group? We did want to mention to you that you can see the link below to continue we encourage everyone to get a copy of the home study course. And we've now worked it out that there is a new monthly payment plan that you can actually do for those who are concerned about cost. We also will place our email in the chat box because there are scholarships available. We can email you some of those because we want to do everything we can to bring everybody on board. And part of our efforts here is we're really focused on placing the man who tapped the secrets of the universe in the hands of everyone, as well as the home study course. And it's quite an achievement. I will say for myself, it's quite an achievement when you actually finish the home study course for the first time and you receive a certificate of completion. So we do want to encourage any of you that have the home study course to please send us a picture with you with your home study course, maybe with one of the units, and let us collect a picture of all of the students that are out there so that we can continue to collect this community. So final words from the panel as we wait for any other questions here. Last thoughts as we're wrapping up lesson 13 and unit 4. John,
that's what it looks like. Kimberly, how about that?
It's not daunting when you hold one unit at a time, John.
Yes, exactly.
All right,
it's a life changer, and people will realize there's no turning back. Once you enter into that portal of light, things will unfold differently for you. So I'm excited for everyone.
Well, and even for like I know Ken's been working on it, and Jim, Jim, you've been doing this home study course for now 50 years. What do you notice each time that you go through it?
It's a new revelation for me each time. It never ceases to amaze. It never ceases to unfold. Things that, and we all have said it, that's things that you might have passed over in previous readings, depending on what you're dealing with in life and where you are in the day-to-day, jump out at you that you didn't see before because they all of a sudden apply. But to me, the most amazing thing about the units, hold it up, is let me read it. When you get, it's on the cover page of every unit, and this is so important to remember what you're doing. Universal law, you're learning universal law, you're learning natural science, and you're learning a living philosophy. And that living philosophy is a home study course in the science of man. It's so important to, before you open to the first page of each unit, remind yourself of that. This is knowledge you cannot get anywhere else on the planet in this intensity and in this form. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Ken, a final word from you before I go to Karen, because you were just saying today, even just rereading Unit 4 was really another eye-opening experience for you.
Yeah, 100%. I just related what that really hit me today in terms of that lesson. This week's lesson was the realization that I've done things in this lifetime certainly that weren't up to par or that I'm really proud of, and I've done things that I feel really good about, and that's certainly the last 30 plus years of my life. But prior to that, there were some things. So I guess, there's an old adage I use, don't be the tosspot calling the kettle black. But to think back of millions of lives and that we all have murdered, we all have stolen and pillaged and done those types of things is a hard concept in this life. But when you start to go to that inner mind, you start to realize, yeah, this isn't my first barbecue. I think I've been around here a minute, and thus it allowed me to really get at peace with what people that aren't necessarily living their best life and maybe spreading the light of love, because the laws of gravity and the laws of nature are absolute and nobody can violate them. So we really only hurt ourselves when we're not hurting others. We're really just hurting ourselves.
Thank you. And Karen, final thought before I make our final announcements.
Some things that I encourage people to buy. Buy the study course is there's a part that we didn't even talk about, which goes into Assyria, Babylonian, Egypt, India, and the mystics, and which another time we can these studies it's so dense. Even just to put it in 10 minutes, it's just which part do you pick? And I would say I would agree with everybody else. You pick the part that's significant to you at any particular point in time. So, but it's rich content. So thank you for inviting me to play.
We are thrilled. So if we would go ahead and we'll invite everybody to take a look at the banner there, where you can certainly get your own copy of the home study course and share that with others. And here's what we have ahead. Just a couple of things we wanted to mention with events. So Ken recently spoke at the University of Science and Philosophy, and his video is up there. We're going to drop the link in there, and we'll pull the slides up. That will drop the link, but his video is finally live there on that University of Science and Philosophy channel. Please copy the link if you have anybody in your world that has been battling addiction. This was a very powerful hour that he shared, if I can say so myself, and he was there pictured with one of Walter's scientific drawings that he actually had there at the museum that we pulled out of the archives. We also have, there is an event coming up for those of you that want to see any of the Russell work. There is an event on September 28th and 29th in Waynesboro, Virginia. Virginia. You can learn more about that at philosophy.org. Let me give you a snapshot for what our month looks like. There you have it on the screen. We've now just completed lesson 13, and now we're moving into the higher knowledge of creation. So for those of you that have your home study course, please read lesson 14. Come prepared with questions. That is one of our favorite things. One of our favorite things to do is questions from you, as this is an iterative process that we're learning more and more. So we will see you all next week. A gracious thank you to you all. Miss Karen says you're all so lovely, loving, and fun. Thank you, Ken. You are so amazing. Linda says she loves the home study course. And so a gracious thank you to you all. We will see you next week, everyone.
Thank you, Karen.